Hi, I'm John Asbell, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I'm a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. What is one of the most powerful tools, a superpower even, that can help you achieve better results, get more spin for your initiatives, and even get better alignment out of a team? It may surprise you because it's not your super cool creative idea. It's not that call to action button that Google Analytics recognize perform well. It's not even your ad copy. Those hopefully will all perform well. But the one that's often a miss and may even boost your career more quickly is being able to communicate up. And up refers to the powers that be, often the C-suite that run a company. And if it's you that run the company, well, then it also applies to your banker, your board of directors, and so on. But understanding how to communicate to them, to be a C-suite whisperer, if you will, very often helps you in your career, and that superpower can be defined as better communicating up. John Asbell is the Vice President of Digital Marketing at American Residential Services, operating under the trade name ARS Rescue Rooter, which is one of the nation's largest networks and suppliers of HVAC and plumbing services companies. And on this episode, we will discuss marketing and home services, superpower of communicating up, translating marketing speak, testing new initiatives, looking at problems from different angles, questions and curveballs, building trust, clarity, call centers, superhero fights, HVAC, plumbing, pumpkin pie lead gen, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a home services marketer with a shark who calls the ocean his home on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. John, welcome to A Shark's Perspective, if you will. Tell us a little bit about your background in your career today.
Yeah, so background. It was funny. I started my career as a developer. I this was not to date myself too much, but
What
late
language?
lateish 90s. Well, it was just HTML, CSS,
Okay.
that kind of stuff,
At least it wasn't COBOL, because then you'd
No,
be
no. Is that
old.
not that old? Lots of JavaScript.
Yeah.
I did do a lot of PHP. But when the internet was becoming a thing, it was close to the thing that it is today. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. I want to learn how to build websites. That seemed to me the most immediate way to kind of get in the game. And so really focused on learning how to do that. My undergrad is in information technology. And when out of school, I started working for a startup. It was a small e-commerce company, and my job was really just kind of building websites for the e-stores, that kind of thing. And this was back when SEO was a thing you could do to a website. You literally just change the title tag, drop some keywords in, you're good to go. And the guy that ran the company, he was kind of an old school sales guy, but he really liked marketing, and he was getting into like the SEO aspect of things, and SEM wasn't even really a thing at this point, right? There was no Google ads. But and I never will forget, he said to me, he was like, building stuff is cool, but like, wouldn't you like to figure out how to get traffic to it and figure out how to make money with it? And I was like, yeah, I would like to figure out how do we do that? It's like, well, let me show you. And you go through, drop some keywords in the title tag, and boom, you're number one on the search engine du jour, Alta Vista or whatever it was back then. And so that was a pretty interesting way to transition into the marketing field. I never had any designs of being a marketer, but just kind of happened like by happenstance. And working for this startup, it was always the same thing you hear about, wearing many hats. And if you want to be able to do something, it's like, well, I'll just learn how to do it. It's like we don't do email marketing. Okay, well, I'll figure out how to do email marketing. We don't have an affiliate program. Okay, well, let's figure out what that's all about. So great learning experience. Did that for a little while, and then transitioned over to a digital agency. So worked for an agency that's owned by one of the big holding companies, and also great experience. You always think of agency work as marketing boot camp, right? Because it's like you're just learning so much, and your clients they're asking you to solve different flavors of the same problem. So I like to think about it. And so I thought it was great experience. there were aspects of it that were not enjoyable at all, right? It's like there's crazy hours, there's crazy demands, not all the time, but enough of the time to make you kind of go, yeah, this is not my jam. So I was, I was grateful for that experience, worked for some great people, but ultimately kind of decided, hey, I'd like to be brand side. So I had an opportunity to get into a leadership role with a large home services company, and I've been in that space, ever since, coming up on 8 years now. At a few different companies and leadership roles in digital customer acquisition.
And so tell us a little bit real quick about what ARS primarily does.
ARS, so we are one of the largest HVAC and plumbing providers in the company. So in the country, we have about 80 locations across the U.S. We're in most major cities, not all, but we've got. It's very interesting the way that the company has been built, because we have a brand, ARS Rescue Rooter, and about half of our locations go to market under that brand. But then we've got, as we've acquired businesses in other markets, we tend to let those brands continue to operate, under the same brand name, just because they typically have a lot of equity and value in that market. And so we've got, about half of our locations operate under some other brands. So, it's very different from, previous roles where, like, you go to market as one fairly well-known national brand. Here we go to market as, a family of brands, and there's, a number of challenges associated with that. It's like market to market, it's different. How do you standardize? How do you create good process? How do you even invest in the brand? That's the thing, because you can't, like, we don't have a national advertising campaign
Right.
where we're building the brand. It doesn't work for us. So it creates a lot of interesting challenges, and the team has to be super flexible and super, they've got to be able to go market to market to market and figure out, what do I do to win in this given market? Because it's usually a different answer, because the competitive set is different, the landscape is different, the weather is different. I mean, we're an HVAC business, so like that, weather is hugely impactful to what we do. Yeah, I've been in the role now here for about 3 years, and I lead our corporate digital strategy group.
Yeah. Well, brands as product lines in local markets, it's a challenge to look at the
Yeah, for
marketplace
sure.
that way. So, but I know when we first met, I believe you had reached out to somebody that I work with to pick my brain about a SaaS technology that I think we shared some knowledge
Yeah,
of at the time. But then
yeah,
we met in person several years ago, and you were also on a panel for me at a conference. And then when I reached out about this show, we started talking about something randomly that I thought was just an amazing topic, because it's not taught nearly enough of. And a
mm.
lot of that is really sort of the superpower, if you will, of communicating up
Oh yeah,
to make
absolutely.
the right kind of people happy to make initiatives move forward. And I
Yeah,
started thinking about what I brought to the table years ago. And I think I learned well after that I had been endowed with that superpower.
yeah,
And I was communicating to the CEO or president of a company. In another role, I recognized this in someone else, and I thought they're doing exactly what I was doing. And I
right.
realized how valuable it was for
Sure,
moving initiatives forward. And they
sure.
were speaking the same language to that leadership team. So, from your own interpretation, what do you think that superpower means for where it's helped you get things moving forward in your own career? And what is it?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you call it a superpower, because I think of a superpower as something that you just have, right? And this is definitely a learned skill
Well,
that
this could be either
that
DC
evolves.
Comics, you're born with it, or
Yeah.
Avengers, you got bit by a spider and all of a
Okay.
sudden you inherit the power.
I love the analogy. Love the analogy, Kenneth. Yeah, I think it's definitely the getting bit by a spider, as opposed to
Okay.
Superman, where I was just endowed with it. And I feel like it's definitely one of those things where you just have to fail at it some before you get good at it, and you realize that, hey, what I'm saying is not landing with these folks. But it's just, you live your job every day, right? And you live doing the marketing work every day. And then, so every so often, you are called to go talk in depth about this to somebody who doesn't think about it every day, nor should they, right? They pay you to do that. And there's so much nuance to it. that it sometimes can be very, very difficult to get the details that you want to cut across and to make the points that you want to make land with these senior leaders. And they're the ones that are, charged with growing the company and making the big decisions and leading the strategy for the business. And, it can be very difficult sometimes to translate sort of the marketing speak and the detail to, bubble up the really, really important points and just make it very clear for them, what you're trying to say and the initiatives you're trying to get to move forward. And it's depending on who you're talking to, you can get very, very different perspectives, right? So if you're in a meeting with, let's say, a CEO, the CFO, and the chief human resources person, right? They're all thinking about the business from very different angles, right? And they're all thinking about what you're saying from very different angles. And it's always been amazing to me. One of the exercises I'll go through when I know I'm going to go present to senior leaders is I'll think about what questions could they ask me, right? And I'll think about, okay, this person, their perspective is this, so they're likely to ask about these things. This other person, their perspective is this, and they're likely to ask about these different things. And it never ceases to amaze me that I sometimes am able to guess a few of them, but there is almost always something out of left field that I didn't think about. You know what I mean? And it's just because their perspective is so much different from mine and what I do in the day to day. And okay, so where does the superpower come in, right? It's being able to think on your feet. And then when you get those questions that come out of left field, how do you answer them succinctly enough to where you don't go down a rabbit hole, where you don't invite a lot of other questions that maybe you don't have great answers to, that maybe you don't have great data to support, all that kind of stuff. And it really is just this skill that you kind of learn over time. And I find that the people who have that skill and who have developed it and kind of gone through it enough times, those are the ones who really end up moving up the organization into leadership roles, right?
Absolutely.
Because that skill allows you to earn trust, right? I never will forget a former CMO of mine. We were talking about this kind of a topic related to this, but it was definitely being able to answer questions. And he said, he used this term, and I never will forget. He said, if you can't answer the question, that's like putting blood in the water. You'll like this. It's a shark analogy, right? He's like, it's like blood in the water for those guys when you can't answer a question, or you answer it you answer it poorly, or you try to provide too much detail or whatever. And he's like, you have to figure out how to avoid it. If you can't answer it, think about, that's a great question. I'll come back and get back with you on that. That kind of a response is going to be much, much better than going off, on some tangent where maybe you're not really prepared to speak on it. So that's one of my sort of guiding principles is don't put any blood in the water. If I get one of those questions where I think that's what's happening, then I try to avoid it and double back. And I have always found that that's a great question. Let me go get some more detail and come back to you on that is usually a pretty good way to diffuse. But yeah, anyway, so it's one of those things that you just develop over time. And as you get a feel for working with the same leaders and start to really understand what their perspectives are and what they care about, then you're better able to kind of tailor those answers and tailor those details that you're providing to them.
But to your point, what I absolutely love about it is because even the CEO likely reports to a board of directors,
right?
Or an investment group behind that. So it's helping them. And I also love the point that you may think you're coming in to fix the Rubik's Cube, but they're not looking at the same side of the cube that you are when trying to explain it, because the HR person's thinking about how to get the right fit, or the finance guy is thinking, how much money do we give John and his team to do? And the CEO is worried about culture. It's not necessarily, is John the most creative marketer?
Right.
But it's also really important because a lot of times the group that gets the most focus is marketing and sales.
Oh, 100%.
So it is a critical skill in every role you're in, but it's exceptionally critical as more and more dollars have moved into the digital space, especially. It's not just the old brand positioning and we thought it was a good ad we placed somewhere. Now it's, do we give John another $1 million to spend on Google ads or Instagram ads, whatever. So I think it's fascinating. So you said, though, that you learned it over time. If you looked back in your own career, what do you think would have progressed you to be able to get to that place to where you feel more comfortable more quickly? Because my niece is in school right now. She's about to graduate the degree in marketing. And I was thinking about all of the skills that she's not being taught
Oh
in
yeah.
school.
Oh yeah.
And sadly, she's going to work immediately out of school for an agency, which is,
Oh wow.
I've worked in the agency world as well. So,
Yeah.
that's a place that's wonderful and can also
Yeah.
poison your mind.
Yes. 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 Yes.
But that skill that she taught, it's nothing around, the skill that we're talking about is not around Google Analytics.
Yeah.
It's not about creative advertising.
Right.
It's just nothing that you necessarily think about how to communicate up and what they could do for you. But what do you think you could have either learned more, done more, or what was your epiphany to think I'm able to communicate to what they need to hear and understand to move initiatives forward?
Yeah, I wish there was a really a magical, oh, you just go do this thing. The
Fold your
real
arms
answer.
and blink and dream a genie. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. The real answer is I think it's just repetition, right? And it's just it was getting thrown enough curveball type questions. And it really made me just sort of stop and go, why do I feel like every time I'm having these conversations, I'm getting asked questions that I had never occurred to me before. And I think that's when it realized that like, well, you're not really thinking about it from all these different perspectives. And once you try to take those perspectives, you're a little more, I'm not saying it's a perfect science, right? But you're a little more able to prepare yourself with the kinds of things that you think they will actually ask you. And so, the unfortunate answer is it's really just the trial by fire scenario where you've got to go do it and you've got to kind of fall on your face and get tripped up a few times and then understand, how do I dodge those landmines in the future, or at a minimum figure out how to eloquently back out of this situation with something like a great question, not prepared to discuss, we'll follow up and come get back to you, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's reminding me something that's going on politically too. Is when you are going to get asked some curveballs,
Oh yeah.
but you can't just ask, well, I'll have to defer you to the Department of Justice on that
No,
with every
no.
other answer, because that's not going to last you very long in your job either, is just to
No, it's
deflect.
not. No, it's not. And it's really, what you're trying to do, if you think about what you're really trying to do, is you're trying to either build trust or you're trying to improve the trust that already exists, right? Every time you have those conversations, it's like that's really, I mean, these are people that you're talking to, really. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's okay, do I trust this person? Do I trust what he's saying? Do I trust the data he's presenting? Do I trust the direction that he is suggesting? Right. And it's like the more prepared you are and the better you can kind of anticipate the conversation, the more you're able to build that trust with your leadership team.
We're going to talk a little bit about testing. And so when you think about communicating your needs as the digital marketing evolves, how do you communicate and go about looking then at testing new channels, new vendors, new ideas, things like that, so that you get the kind of buy-in that helps you develop that trust to be able to really allow a lot of good marketing takes some time to validate. It's not just,
Yeah.
2 seconds, what happened.
Yes. Such a great topic. And I will say that I have been reasonably lucky in my career. I've talked to a number of marketers who haven't been lucky, but I've worked for leaders and been in organizations that were, for the most part, pretty supportive of testing and kind of understood that marketing, it's part art, part science, right? And the art part is that I think this thing will work, but I'd really like to. I don't have any proof, so I'd like to go try it. But what I found, to specifically answer your question, when you're trying to get the buy-in, again, it goes back to thinking about the perspective and like, what could I say to this person to make them think that this test is a good idea, right? And so if you think about maybe the person who leads finance and you're talking to them about it, well, it's a numbers game, right? And so, okay, what data can I present, even if it's an estimate, right? And it's hey, I think we can go run this test. If it goes well, this is how well I think it could possibly go, best case. This is how poorly I think it could possibly go, worst case. And then here's kind of the financial impact of that. And again, I know we don't know, right? And you want to kind of caveat it a little bit. But I think if you can present it in those terms, it's much easier to get buy-in for what you want to do. And you are kind of putting yourself out there a little bit, right? I don't know the future. This thing could, I mean, the worst case scenario on a number of tests is it could fail miserably and we could waste a lot of money. That's the worst case scenario, right? You can't say that. So you definitely have to kind of put it in perspective of, here's the most likely thing to happen. Like, if it goes really bad, it could look like this. If it goes really great, it could look like this. more than likely it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And here's kind of where I think that's going to net out. I used to tell my team because this is a previous role. I was trying to instill a testing culture in my team, and when there's always so many things you could test, right? So you have to go through some kind of a prioritization exercise. And what does that exercise look like? Well, it looks like taking all of those things that you could be running tests on and determining, I think this thing would be the most impactful, so let's do that first. And the team would always say, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen when I test this. And I said, I understand, but you are the most qualified person in this organization as the marketer to make some kind of an educated guess. There's nobody else here that can make some kind of an educated guess about what this is going to yield for the business. You are the best person to do that. And they would be like, me? You know what I mean? It's a lot of responsibility because, and oftentimes you're talking about testing things that are millions of dollars, right? And it could be very impactful to the business. But, I just found that that's something you have to be comfortable with as a marketer. You have to be comfortable with taking risks. You have to be comfortable with making bets. And I mean, I've been fortunate that most of them have worked out. Certainly a number of them have not worked out as well as I wanted. But I can think of a few things that have worked out better than I anticipated. But like I say, in most cases, it's kind of the middle of the road scenario. I mean, you and I both know, Kenneth, most tests don't work, right? They don't. It's the unfortunate reality. You're going to test 100 things. 10 of them are probably going to work pretty well. The other 90 are going to be,
Yeah. Well, I think it's remarkable too, when you think about the fact that a lot of times with tests, I know a lot of marketers who are not exactly brave hearts.
Yeah.
If they rely on the C-suite to ask you or someone similar role to help fix a problem, because to your own point, you can ask your own team as another marketing person that they're the most qualified person to go find out. But that's really what they're relying on you to do, and then interpret back to them in a way that they can at least understand. And I love the point of at least setting the guardrail of understanding where this might fail, because they may know that they have a problem. They maybe don't know how much it's going to cost to fix that problem or the depth of what the problem really is. But you've also done some work like we talked about with the Wonder Kids over on the agency side. You work with a lot of agencies, I'm sure now. How can an agency, especially in the marketing and advertising space, help a marketer better communicate? Because as we know, their tentacles can often run deep inside an organization and extend in a communication role outside of just that direct line that you have with them.
That's a great question. I will tell you that the way that I manage my agency partners is that I am very candid and transparent with them. And you'll find that I will over explain things to them, and I will give them way too much context for what's going on in the business. And there's a reason that I do that, because when I worked on the agency side, the thing that would drive me crazy was when we were getting these requests from our clients and they just didn't seem to make sense. And it was always like, I'm missing some piece of context. I'm missing some kind of challenge that's happening in their organization. I'm missing something in order to really provide the most value that I can to them. And that's not helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for the client. It's not helpful for the agency. And so what I tend to do is just over explain everything to because I'm well aware they're not in my business every day, right? They're not. Even the best agency partners are not in your business every day, right? And so it just requires a lot of investment. It requires investing in educating them, investing in giving them all the context of what's going on in the business. And then once you have done that, and you can challenge them to, how would you help us solve this problem? You'll find that you get much better answers. And you'll find that you're much more comfortable letting them come in and present to other team members, other stakeholders, members of your leadership, because they're much better able to speak to the real challenges that are going on in the business, and they're much better able to solution real problems or give you real solutions to the problems. And they're things that you can actually take and go implement pretty quickly, because they've skipped that whole issue of, I don't really get the context of the business problem that I'm trying to help you solve. It's like you're telling me that you need more cheaper leads. Okay, great. Like why? You know what I mean? What is the driver behind that? Is it possible I could give you fewer better leads? Would that help you? You know what I mean? Like, just as a very, very simple example. But yeah, I've always over communicated with my agency partners, and like I'll find, you've got a 30-minute check-in. I'll find myself talking to them for 20 minutes about, everything that's going on in the business, just so they have all the context and can go better help us, tackle the challenges that we've got in front of us.
A lot of times, and I think I've found this out, especially on the consulting that I've done, even now. I probably learned it more then than I did even when I was on the brand side or the agency side. Is when I'm on the agency side, I try to be more empathetic, if you will, and feel like because I've been in a brand, I get what you're going through, but I
Yeah.
don't, because I don't know what you're going through at that moment. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes, especially agencies, overthink it without listening more to what
Yeah.
it is. And they may think they understand the solution, the problem, but I mean, even with my background, and I've worked with a lot of the Fortune 200 and a lot of the Fortune 200 agencies, there's still a massive disconnect in between the two, and it's not for lack of trying, but sometimes it's for a lack of listening. So I love what you said, but the language of performance, I think, also across teams internally is important, especially when it's a conversation with procurement or customer service or even the call center. What advice would you give to a marketer who's trying to communicate what the expectations should be across those different teams?
Oh wow, I like that you mentioned call center.
I've worn this blood with you, so I get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Please
like
counsel me on what I went through.
so it's so interesting. If I look back over my own career, and I think I mentioned I started in e-commerce, right? So call center was not a part of what we were doing at that point, right? But as I moved into the role with the agency, and I moved into especially the home services space, call center is such a huge important part of business. It's massive, and it has such an impact on what you do as a marketer, right? Because if you think about it, the business cares about not just the marketing spend and not just the demand that you drove. They care about what happened all the way down at the bottom of the funnel, where did I collect money or not? And the reality is that it takes concerted partnership between marketing and between the call center sales team, whatever you call it in your given situation. And so I've had to just learn a ton. I know way more about call center than I ever wanted to know. I can tell you that. And it's about working in partnership with them and really seeing yourself as like it can never be an us first them. It can never be I gave you the leads, you didn't do what you're supposed to do with them. It can never be your leads are garbage, that's why we can't convert them. It can never be that. It's always that does not breed success in any way, shape, or form in any situation. It just doesn't. So it's always got to be how can I work together with them in order to improve the situation. That's always the mentality that you have got to take, always. And like, it can be things like, can I help you with the scripting? Like maybe, I can give you some context on this lead source and the mentality of this person. And maybe we can use that input to improve the scripting that we've got that we use on this particular type of lead. But you mentioned empathy earlier in the conversation, and I think it's really taking that approach to those other stakeholders, being empathetic, trying to put yourself in their shoes. What is the challenges that they are solving in their day-to-day role that maybe I could help them solve? I'm not saying I'm going to do their job for them, or I'm not saying I'm going to go, hey, I have, expertise that you don't have, move out of the way. It's how can I bring what I know to better partner with you to solve the things that we need to solve together to produce the right result for the business. And there's so many examples of that. And the call center funnel, there's so many breakpoints. You know what I mean? There's your especially on that. I deal with a lot of like inbound leads which produce an outbound call. So there's so many breakpoints there. There's your speed to lead, your contact rate, your conversion rate, your close rate, your all those things. There's so many breakpoints that happen in that funnel, and you've got to be like part detective in partnership with your sales team to figure out where's the breakpoint that's impacting things the worst, and what can we go do in kind of a scrappy way to prove out that we could potentially fix it, and then maybe that leads to some bigger project down the road. But again, it's just I think being empathetic to the issues that the other teams are dealing with is really really the key.
Yeah, I talk a lot about connecting the dots and alignment, and I love talking about the value of call centers and also where the break points are that you just mentioned. I mean, the ads.
Yeah.
There's a million times where you're running an ad for 50% off of $100 project. And then they get to the call center and the call center is on the phone with them, tell them it's only $49.95. Well, the ad says 50% off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, there's some confusion there for the customer. They don't understand. And then the call center is blaming marketing. Marketing's blaming sales. Sales is blaming everybody. And as long as it's not them, but at the end of the day, it's not solving the problem for the customer. And
Yeah.
unless you start aligning that and pulling it together and being able to communicate with each other is such a role that isn't taught nearly enough in school, specifically for where the customer journey goes across, because it's all these breakpoints. As a detective, they get exposed quickly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kenneth, I've got a great story. You mentioned ads. So the previous organization I worked for, we were running. This was specific to Facebook. We were doing a lot of Facebook advertising at the time, and we were running a campaign around Thanksgiving. And we had, a lot of different creatives in market at the time. But one of them had a piece of pumpkin pie in the image. And this was a lead ad, right? So it was, the picture of the pumpkin pie, then a blurb about the product, then a lead ad.
I guarantee you I clicked through on that.
Yeah,
It was
you
pumpkin
very
pie.
very likely. But here's the thing. My call center started telling me we are getting leads for people who want pumpkin pie recipes. What do we do? And I was like, well, just Google pumpkin pie recipes and give it to them. That was the first thought. But no, I was like, oh, okay, I see the issue, right? It's like you've gotta. I mean, that was a very specific example and kind of a funny one. But the broader issue was these are people that are on Facebook. Okay, they're focused on pictures of their kids and what they had for dinner. They're not focused on like your product. So you've got to kind of take that
They want a
mentality.
recipe for pumpkin pie, not
Yeah,
pumpkin pie used in an ad
that's
campaign
right. That's
for an
right.
HVAC system.
So you've got a sales team. Like here's some thoughts about what where this consumer is in their journey. Very upper funnel at this point, right? They don't even really understand what the product is or why they might want it. So you've got to take a step back, and instead of just going like, let me close this sale, you need to be like, okay, how could I better educate you? Person, because clearly you thought you were getting a pumpkin pie recipe, right? And so I love that story just because it's so demonstrative of people's short attention spans and people going like, oh yeah, pumpkin pie, great, but the reality is it can create so much havoc if you don't have that relationship with because I mean, like, imagine a scenario where the two organizations are very siloed and all the sales team is going, marketing's a joke. They're just giving us leads for pumpkin pie recipes, right? Whereas if you've got a decent enough relationship, you can have that conversation. Okay, no, that's not what this is. Let's figure out how we can work together to improve that.
It is really a difficulty because this is something I love to put up pictures of silos and talk about breaking down silos on stage. But I don't think a lot of times until you've worked in that kind of complex environment that you could really understand the power of aligning your marketing with a consumer until you've run into just significant hurdles and funny examples like that.
Yeah.
Where they're disconnected. So, well, John, I ask this of everybody that comes on the show. What is your favorite kind of shark and why? You're on a shark's perspective.
I mean, so Kenneth, I'll be honest and tell you, I could probably name like 3 or 4 different kinds of sharks. So it's
Yeah,
going to be one of
not
those.
many on the Mississippi River close to you.
No, not at all. If I would say a tiger shark just because they kind of have the cool striping, and that's just a cool, like, it's like two cool animals put together, like a tiger and a shark. So I'm going to go tiger shark.
So 2 days ago, I spoke on stage and I showed a video of me swimming and touching a tiger shark.
Oh, really? Okay.
Massive shark.
Huh.
No, it's one of my favorites as well. Well, John, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I am ready.
All right. So a little bit of what we talked about was the superpower of language, really used for the C-suite and around. But what's a better language to learn, Spanish or French?
Whew. I'm gonna go Spanish, just because I feel like you've got a higher likelihood of running into somebody that speaks Spanish in your everyday life as an American than someone who speaks French.
We don't have a border issue with people from Quebec.
We do not. We do not.
Yeah, so,
right.
All right. Number 2, we also talked a little bit about superpowers. Which would you rather have the superpower of, flying or invisibility?
I think definitely flying. I've always had a little bit of a fear of heights, and I feel like if I could fly, that would just immediately go away because that immediately removes all of the danger. So I would go for flying.
Well, in truth, though, but if you did have the power of invisibility, you could tell everybody that they didn't see you, but you were busy flying.
Oh, that's very true. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very
You could
true.
just make up all kinds of lies. Yeah, I was up there flying through the buildings. All right, number three. Who would win in a fight? The Justice League or the Avengers? Since we talked a little DC Marvel.
Yeah, we did. I would probably the Justice League. It's one of those things about the characters, and the Justice League is more like gods. Superman is like a god. Really, and so like I would have to go Justice League, even though I'm probably a bigger fan of the Marvel characters.
All right, number four. More preferred lead gen channel, say product line, if you will. Air conditioning and heating or plumbing?
They both have their pluses, their pluses. Uh,
They both have issues. If something breaks, there's a real urgency.
oh yeah, they're both very urgent. They're both very urgent. Probably air conditioning and heating, I would say, is the favor, just because the cost benefit is a lot greater on that one.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, number five, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today: biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, biscuits.
Okay,
Yeah, biscuits for sure.
no doubt. Why so?
Easy. And I do like cornbread, by the way. I don't
Yeah.
mean to like say a good jalapeno cornbread, like you can't beat that. But a biscuit can be dessert, or it can be part of the meal. It's just super flexible, and like I appreciate that that characteristic in my food.
Amen. No reservation there. So, John, you and I should probably start a self-help group for marketers who've been through some of these communication struggles. But where can people find out more about you, find out more about ARS, what you're doing, and keep up with you and more?
Yeah, I mean, probably LinkedIn is the best place. I'm pretty easy to find on that platform.
All right, John, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you, Kenneth. It's great.
So there was my conversation with John Asbell, the Vice President of Digital Marketing at American Residential Services, operating under the name ARS Rescue Router, which is one of the nation's largest networks and suppliers of HVAC and plumbing services companies. Let's take a look at three key takeaways from our conversation with him. First, great point for anyone in any role to remember. You do your job every day, and senior leaders are making decisions based on the hours of nuanced work that you're performing. Each kind of leader looks at a problem, a common one that you're all trying to solve, but in a very different perspective. And they're all thinking about what you are saying from very different angles. And when you think of problem solving, it's easy to look at a Rubik's Cube and think that everyone sees the same colors on each side the same way. There's a blue next to a green, above a red, and so on. But not everyone is looking at the same side of the cube. And remember, they trust your expertise, or should at least, but you have to communicate to them what the solution is and how you're going to get there from their perspective. The better that you can understand how they look at the different sides and explain how to solve the problem, then it will also allow you to move further up into leadership positions, because that skill allows you to earn trust. I love this quote from John. You're trying to build trust, or you're trying to improve the trust that already exists. So true. And that applies whether it's communicating with a C-suite, your team, agencies, etc. Over my own career, I've recognized when this power existed in me in roles, and I've seen it in others. I wish even that I did it well all the time, but we're all continuing to learn and improve. Second, so how do you learn this skill of C-suite whispering, as I call it? John says it's through repetition, and that's true, but it's not always just hitting fastballs nonstop. Some of the greatest batters generally knew well how to hit curveballs. And you'll get asked a lot of questions, fastballs and curveballs, by leaders. John said if you can't answer the question, then that's like putting blood in the water. So understanding what their perspectives are, what they care about, will help them move forward and move your initiatives forward. And a great reminder, these are just people that you're working with who just need to understand what you have to say. Third, a good reminder on clarity. Draw a line from your ads and your messaging through your team, through consumers, through your call center, your agencies, clients, to the C-suite, or even just your peers. Communicate with clarity. The more you communicate with clarity, the better expectations can be mutually understood. It's something I continue to work on every day, and I hope you will too. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I am so thankful to everyone who listens. You have a superpower, but whatever that power is, your job today is to be just super, like a super shark. See you soon and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.